So this is a review for The Old Grey Hare, released in 1944. It's the 444th in the series, and it's directed by Bob Clampett. You can find this short in numerous ways. So you've got the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 5 DVD set, the Platinum Collection Volume 1 DVD or Blu-ray set, and on the Bugs Bunny 80th Blu-ray set, and it's also within Bugs Bunny Superstar, which has had various releases. So yeah, very obscure cartoon, lost media of course, no I kid, but that's where you can find it. And I believe plenty of digital outlets has this as well, except YouTube, unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it as it is a copyrighted cartoon. In case you haven't seen this one's fairly popular when it comes to the Clampett output, but in case you haven't seen it, well, Elmer has been trying for ages to get that wascally wabbit, but a voice from above transports Elmer to the future of the year 2000. And we see a chase where old Elmer finally gets that wabbit, or so he thinks, and we'll get to that in a moment. We even get a little side story on how the chase between the two really began when the two were babies. First up, you're going to hear are the highlights of the audio commentary I did with my good friend Austin Kelly before I had to take that down due to copyright. Then after that, I'll go through some more references, and I'll go through the short itself. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And with me today is Austin Kelly, who will let me know about something about the opening title. So say hi.
Hi, I just wanted to jump in about something I noticed in the opening credits. You'll notice in the mid-40s, or at least 1944, only Mel Blanc only gets credit on Bugs Bunny cartoons, and that's because his contract around this time actually stated that he was only able to receive screen credit on Bugs cartoons. Now, as time went on, the contract was expanded to Bugs, Porky, and Daffy cartoons, and obviously soon it would be all cartoons. But I just thought that was an interesting tidbit to throw in there because you only see Blanc credited on the Bugs cartoons in '44.
So weird.
Yeah, wow.
And I love this
going the extra mile.
Exactly, and speaking of extra mile, look at the design of this old Bugs Bunny. It's just incredible. It's just it's absolutely brilliant. Where are those buildings today? I mean, you know, when year 2000 hit, we didn't get these buildings. That's for sure. All these guns.
Oh, I do want to talk about this death scene with Bugs, or at least where he thinks he's going to die. This is animated by Bob McKimson, master Warner animator. McKimson was practically typecast at this point as like a death animator. He does the death scene in Drafty Daffy, and he does the scene of Bugs thinking he's dead and Bugs Bunny gets the Boyd. And obviously, most famously, he does Bugs dying in Elmer's arms in A Wild Hare. That's a really funny, dramatic scene. I highly suggest you check that one out, too.
It's so weird that later on, Chuck Jones would actually revisit the idea of young Looney Tunes. This is before Tiny Toons, of course, and Baby Looney Tunes. You know, Shudder. Like just that series just disturbs me. But anyway, but yeah, in Bugs Bunny's busting out all over, one of the new segments he directed involved a young Bugs and Elmer, which, you know, the less we talk about that special, the better, I suppose. But still have to point that out.
I didn't watch it again until preparing for this commentary, and I'd seen it a lot as a kid. And people were praising it like crazy, and that might just be a lot of the weirdos online that are madly obsessed with Clampett. But I was revisiting this cartoon, and it didn't work as well for me as a lot of Clampett stuff from the same period did. Because I guess kind of like Buckaroo Bugs, which obviously is from the same period and the same year, it's kind of harsh seeing Bugs as an antagonist type of character. I mean, that's not really what he is in this cartoon, but I feel like half of the stuff he does to Elmer isn't, it's more brutal and just ouch than it is funny. It's like at the beginning, Elmer's sobbing, and then he's buried under the ground, like never to be spoken of again. I mean, it might just be me looking into it too much. And well, I do want to point out before we get any deeper into this, before we have to wrap up, that scene, that subtle acting scene, and this scene too, but to a lesser extent, these are both more Bob McKimson work, and it's amazing to see his perspective and his skill at work because, you know, people underestimate how much work you have to put in an actual cartoon, but Bugs has to turn one way, turn the shovel the other way. I mean, so much work must have gone in that scene. It looks so beautiful.
So those were the highlights, so let's go a few more bits of trivia that were missed the first time around. Interestingly enough, and it's not something you really realize when watching this short, but you see normal age Elmer in the beginning, then you see old Elmer, and then you see baby Elmer as well. But with Bugs Bunny, you only see the older Bugs Bunny and the baby Bugs Bunny, but you don't see him at his normal age. So it's kind of interesting, isn't it? So 2 meanings for the actual title in case you weren't aware, so of course, it's the usual hair/hair pun. Old and grey, grey hair, old grey hair. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you get it. But there is also a song called The Old Grey Mare, which, if you're a Simpsons fan like me, you're probably familiar with the song, but they've used that song plenty of times in these shorts. So it's, of course, a play on both the pun and the song itself. And right away, what I love about this short is how it just gets straight into the meat of things. There's no build-up, nothing. We see Elmer straight away crying. He's getting all emotional. He just cannot get that rabbit. Because by this point, him and Bugs were in quite a few shorts from the various units at the time. So by this point, people would have been familiar with their rivalry. So you can do a story like this where you can start off pretty much in the middle of what's going on. So this is probably him in the middle of some sort of a hunt, and he's just finally having an emotional breakdown.
I tried and I tried, but I just simply can't seem to catch that old rabbit.
And the animation's fantastic. I'm pretty sure it's McKimson, but regardless, it is fantastic animation in the beginning, just showcasing all of his emotion and despair of not being able to get that rabbit. But what a great idea here and how it's executed. You just got this divine intervention being thing. It's not even explained what this thing is. It's just there. You don't even need to know any of that stuff. It works so well. Where it's like, you know what? Let's go and answer your question about whether you're going to end up catching that rabbit or not.
If at first you don't succeed, Elmer, try again.
Try again? Yeah, but how long will it take?
Come, Elmer, let us look far into the future.
And I love the backgrounds here where we go through the decades. So you got this sort of futuristic 50s style look, even though, okay, this came out in 1944, but still, you got this wonderful modern design at the back, and we just see nothing but color. And I guess this is one way to cut down the costs because Clampett's shorts ended up costing a lot more money. So that's why he would do a lot of cheater shorts and also do certain things like this, which kept the cost down. And what's interesting, I first watched this short in the 90s, where I watched as part of Bugs Bunny Superstar, and I never actually watched the proper short until it was released on the Golden Collections. So for me, the year 2000 was still into the future, but now it's, well, quaint, of course, but yeah, I remember for the longest time, the year 2000 was going to be a big year just because of that number. And in another thing that's lost to time, which funnily enough, in the 90s, you still would have heard this, and I think this service was still available even in the early 2000s. I'm not sure where it stopped or if it's still around in some places, but there'd be a line you could call and it'll actually tell you the exact time. So it'd be like, at the sound of this tone, it'll be 9 o'clock, beep. It'll be 9:01, beep, and so on. And here you hear this divine voice saying, when you hear the sound of the gong, it'll be exactly 2000 AD.
When you hear the sound of the gong, it will be exactly 2000 AD.
So that's what that's referencing to. And yeah, it's another thing that's going to be lost to time, really. And then we see old Elmer, and he's got that wonderful little mustache right there. And the animation is fantastic, and I believe this is Scribner. So if I was correct, in the beginning it was McKimson with that nice, solid animation, very smooth. And here, well, Scribner liked to draw a lot of wrinkles and that sort of thing. So he's perfect for this kind of animation style. Now, looking at this newspaper, that's conveniently there, but that's okay. For the purposes of the story, completely fine. But looking at it, first of all, the Daily Rocket. We don't really have a newspaper like that. That's why I'm kind of depressed. The year 2000 came around and we didn't get the Daily Rocket like this. So, New York, London, Paris, I guess it's one giant conglomerate now. I don't know. But anyway, I'm overthinking it, of course. So we look at a few things here. I'll look at the small stuff first. So we got Treasury waives tax on free movie days. So maybe that's just a clipping from something, I don't know. But I like the whole thing. Bing Crosby's horse hasn't come in yet. Bing's bangtail bungles badly in home stretch. So that's a reference to the whole thing where Bing Crosby was a well-known horse breeder, but the horses would never finish in the money, so to speak. So it'd be a case of that they wouldn't quite rank to win anything, whether it's first and I think up to third or thereabouts. I'm not an expert in horse racing, but at the end of the day, his horses didn't make any money. And eventually he did have to sell a ranch that he co-owned with someone to pay an estate tax in the early 1950s. But look at the picture of Bing Crosby. I love that. It's just Bing, beautifully caricatured, but he's just got that old-timey goatee on the bottom there. So, and by the way, in case you were wondering, he passed away in 1974. And of course, the famous smell-o-vision replaces television. This short is not good at predicting the future, does it? Yeah. I mean, there have been these odd theatrical novelties that have come out where they experimented with smells coming from movies and such, like certain mystery movies and that sort of thing, but it's really a novelty. Also, in a lot of theme park rides, you'll get smells like in Soaring across California. I think that's a ride in Disneyland where they would actually have smells in there, so it feels like you're really gliding up in the air. So things like that, but obviously not for home use. I mean, how would you even have the technology set up for something like that? But anyway, and yes, Carl Starling says it will never work. I mean, if Carl Starling had lived to be in 2000, well, he would have been 100 and something years old. He would have been fairly old because he was old already when he was composing for the Looney Tunes shorts. Oh, my other favorite bit there. Quintuplets give birth to quintuplets. Okay, sure. That's pretty random, but anyway. And of course, he looks around for his gun and he sees that it's been magically transformed into a Buck Rogers style gun. And sure enough, yeah, Buck Rogers was a sci-fi hero, like a pulp, radio, comic book, that sort of thing hero that would have been very well known at the time and maybe not as much today, but that's what it's referencing. And that design of the gun pretty much reflects the kind of rocket ships that you would see when seeing the serials at the time and the pulp magazines and that sort of thing. And in another case of me overthinking things, I know, but just hear me out. Why would the first thing he would do, waking up into the future like this, instead of looking at what's changed and everything, oh no, I've worked out I'm in the year 2000, so is that rabbit still alive? I want to hunt him. It's just, I mean, it makes the short even funnier, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure if we all woke up in the future like this, we'd want to see what's going on, but okay, sure. And this design of Bugs Bunny as an old man, such appealing drawings. I mean, it's done so well. The design of the character and the animation, and of course Mel Blanc's voice acting of old Bugs, beautiful. It is fantastic. And the cherry on top with all that is, what's up, Prune Face? Hilarious.
What's up, Prune Face? I'm looking for a little gray rabbit.
Tell me, Droopy, what's he look like?
He looks just like you.
That could be a reference to the Dick Tracy villain Prune Face, but anyway, it's still pretty funny even if you didn't know that. As I mentioned before, by now audiences will be very familiar between the whole Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny rivalry, so it's pretty much going through the motions, but now it's old version, right? But the way it's done here is hilarious. The whole not so fast grandpa, and the fact that he ends up choking Elmer in one of the greatest poses I've ever seen in any short, and then just kisses him anyway and just walks away.
Not so fast there, Grandpa.
Hilarious. But also, from a story point of view, it's great because this also even sets up a bit later on too. So, yeah, this short is one of the best written shorts I've ever seen, if I'm being honest. So Bugs hobbles away and then blames his lumbago, or whatever it is. But anyway, it's his condition there. But look at the backgrounds. I just like the futuristic style here. Sure, it's not going to be as glamorous as what Maurice Noble and Phil Dugard will do later on in Chuck Jones's unit, but for the purposes of the short, is completely fine. Just then the hobbling animation is great as well. So after the two ramble on to each other, Elmer ends up shooting this massive blast from his rocket gun, or whatever that thing is called, And I mean, some wonderful special effects. We see that it's kind of like an old pinball machine because they would have those effects around the pinball. And if you look very closely, I didn't even notice this before, but Bugs apparently melts into the ground and then resurfaces, lying back, looking like he's pretty much dying, as we're going to see this wonderful scene in just a moment. And in this moment, it's not just peak Clampett, it's peak animation, period. Look at those drawings. Look at how solid these drawings are. Look at the acting between the two characters where, okay, they're rivals, but Elmer is showing a bit of remorse at what he's doing and what he did. And he's just looking on to, okay, it's like they're all friends again. And not only that, you got Mel Blanc doing the wonderful acting as old Bugs, well, apparently dying anyway. And it's also clever writing too, because if you know the punchline at the end, all this build-up, it makes it even funnier. It's a scene that comes across that's really serious, and yet it's all one big setup for the punchline later on. It is hilarious, and one of the greatest bits in Looney Tunes history in my book. And when Bugs passes the book, which he somehow gets from under his skin, anyway, I'm not going to overthink that, Elmer opens the book and sees age, only 3.5 years old, and that's something that's been done so many times in Clampett shorts, and yes, I know I'm repeating it here, but it's a reference to Billy Gray's catchphrase in the Abbott and Costello radio show where he played a 3.5-year-old girl, hence where all this comes from. And this is also one of my favourite bits musically, where we just hear very quickly Rockabye Baby, just for like a second or two. Probably one of the best renditions of that song, to be honest. And now we see an origin of sorts of their rivalry, which we all know stays very consistent, right? But who cares? It's funny, right? And he's crawling along. I just love the whole babified Elmer voice done by Arthur Q. Bryan in this whole scene. And we even hear a wonderful rendition of Hunting We Will Go as he's crawling along. He's saying Papa, Mama. And looks like Bugs Bunny's real name is Bugsy Bunny. How about that? And say what you want about this short, because I know a few people actually don't think too much of this short for whatever reason. That's fine, but you can't deny that the baby versions of Elmer and Bugs are really cute looking here. And that's one of the more underrated things of Clampett, I feel. If you watch a lot of his Porky shorts, there were so many cute bits in those, like with maybe a baby duck or whatever, that he did those so well. And I feel that part of his work is probably the most underappreciated. He does cute very well. Of course, he does ugly the best, but, you know. And once again, in a clever bit of writing, we get a call back to earlier on, where the older versions are like, he looks just like you.
I'm looking for a widow baby bunny. I'm gonna toot him dead. Bang, bang. Like that. What does he look like, Doc? He looks just like you.
So we get a repeat of that here, where all that comes from. And I wonder how much that would have hurt when Bugs smashes Elmer in the face with the carrot juice bottle, because back in the day, plastic wasn't really around and used for baby bottles. It was all glass, so it definitely makes sense here, of course, but ouch, that must really hurt. And again, in a really cute bit, we see a chase, and of course, being little kids, they have to stop and have their afternoon nap. I've always loved that bit as a kid, but once again, I think Clampett does cute very well, and it's probably one of the most underappreciated things he did in his directing career. And I remember watching the next bit as a kid, and I always get a kick out of Bugs having a tuba. Like, I mean, I don't know how he even holds that, but anyway, it was so completely unexpected, it took me off guard. Definitely one of my favorite bits in this one. And we see Elmer get into his baby pram, or stroller, depending on what part of the world. We say prams, and I guess Americans say stroller. But we get a little pram chase, and we see Bugs as a police officer trying to trick Elmer. And I always liked seeing the Clampett's version of this, because Jones would do this all the time, and he did it great. There's no question there, whether Ted Pierce wrote his shorts or Michael Maltese. But here, it's just done so well, and of course we see a baby version, and Elmer was never too bright. Though to be fair, he was a baby here, so it's kind of forgivable. But in any case, I like the animation of Baby Bugs here. He's driving along, but in like an invisible car of sorts. It's just a weird effect, but works pretty well. And speaking of weird, you know, rewatching this scene a few times, if you look at the wheels on the pram that Elmer is on, it's not even attached to it. It's like it's got a life of its own. And even though Bugs is doing what he would be doing to Elmer later on as an adult, like here, he's still like a kid, and he just babbles at one moment where they speed up the tape, and then he ends up hitting Elmer in the head and covering his head and that sort of thing. But It really does reflect what kids actually would do when they're pretending to be a policeman, fireman, whatever, right?
Oh, a pleasure driver, huh? What do you think, you're going to a fire?
Well,
Oh, visiting an officer, huh? And don't let it happen again.
But that little audio effect always killed me once again when I first watched this, and even to this day. And then we end this little side story where you see Bugs approaching from behind and says, "You ain't just whistling Dixie," kisses Elmer, and that's the thing that makes Elmer cry like a real baby, because of course, he's still a baby, right? Well, it's 3.5 years old, so not maybe more of a toddler, but anyway.
hey, that was the wabbit.
You ain't just whistling Dixie!
We finish up right there. So Bugs is now reminiscing about the good old days, and he starts singing Memories, and that's a song by Egbert Van Olstein and Gus Kahn, and that's a song from 1915. So I'm guessing that must have been in the mind of Carl Stalling, given that he adapted a lot of these really, well, nowadays, obscure songs, but it works really well here. It was in the movie It All Came True, starring Ann Sheridan, so maybe that was in the back of Clampett's mind as well. I don't know, but hey, it's perfect for this particular scene here.
Memories, memories.
Oh, what have I done to you, old friend?
We all gotta go sometime.
And then when it cuts to the next bit, if you look at the backgrounds changed. I mean, Clampett wasn't exactly known for consistency. Sometimes he'll change animators mid-scene, and sometimes backgrounds mid-scene. So, is it a big deal? No, but it's definitely an observation, as here we clearly go to another animator, and my goodness, the build-up to the final gag is hilarious. In fact, you could even count the fact all the way from when Bugs gets shot by Elmer until now as one massive build-up, including him going through the story of when they were young, just for that one wonderful payoff at the end. And if you look at the animation of Bugs digging along and saying, keep smiling, and Elmer's, of course, being too stupid to realize how on earth is this supposedly injured rabbit digging his own grave, but anyway, it's even funnier. And Elmer is, he's of course crying, and his crying gets stronger and stronger, and that even gets Bugs to start crying. Of course, he's playing along, but just that, the vocals of both Arthur Q. Bryan and Mel Blanc just crying along as though Bugs is really dying is absolutely hilarious.
At the end, your grave. It won't be long now. No tears now. Smile, smile. Oh, well, this is it. Farewell, my old friend.
I do wonder if the audience would pick on the fact that, this is all a prank that Bugs is pulling, but either way. So he digs along, and I just like how subtle it is when Bugs ends up changing himself for Elmer into the grave once he digs it out. And I love the added touch of rest in pieces instead of rest in peace. I guess maybe that's one way to hint at the audience at the time that, no, this is just a prank we're pulling.
So long. Don't forget to write now. Adios. Saludos, amigo. Goodbye, my friend. So long, pal. Bye.
So long,
Bye-bye.
old friend.
Bye.
Goodbye, old buddy.
And then once we realize Bugs is tricked Elmer, he says, "So long, Methuselah," one of the greatest line deliveries ever, in my opinion, and buries Elmer alive, which is kind of cruel, but anyway. I love the posing of Elmer as he's squished in by all of that dirt, and somehow he's still able to speak, but anyway.
So long, Methuselah.
But I guess Elmer's being half glass full here because he's like, you know what, the rabbit's out of my life forever, but no. Bugs shows up, unannounced once again, and he says the line, now, I wouldn't say that, and that comes from Richard Legrand's character, Richard Q. Peavy, and this is the first time you hear it, so in a few shorts after this, whenever you hear that line, well, now, I wouldn't say that, that's where it actually comes from. And we end with an explosion. Well, we don't actually see the explosion itself, we just see the effects it has on the end titles, which is a nice little touch. Wow, this short is one of my childhood favorites. I saw it all the time, like I said, because of Bugs Bunny Superstar. And watching it again and again, I always notice something new, and it is definitely one of Clampett's masterpieces. It's one of the funniest shorts ever made, period. It's 10 out of 10 for me, and it's one that I'll just keep returning to again and again because it's just so darn funny. It's one whole half of the short is basically just one massive setup and for that wonderful punchline at the end. And so that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, so long, Methuselah.
That pesky wabbit is out of my wife forever and ever.
Well, now, I wouldn't say that.